It had taken weeks to prepare for our anniversary dinner. I had picked her favorite restaurant, and she couldn't stop talking about how the window table overlooking the city skyline had been reserved since our third anniversary. The waiters had even gone out of their way to bring out a bottle of wine with a ribbon tied around it as we sat there, everything seeming perfect. Olivia, smiling that recognizable smile that once brightened my life, looked perfect, especially with her favorite vintage in front of her. For a brief moment, I allowed myself to believe we could get through the tough time we'd been facing. I had even gone the extra mile to purchase a personalized necklace, a delicate chain with a small pendant engraved with our wedding date. My speech was ready. I planned to remind her of everything we had built together, hoping the night would rekindle something between us, melt away the coldness, and erase the distance that had settled in over the past few months. But what I didn't know, what I could have never predicted, was that Olivia had prepared a speech of her own. Just as the wine arrived halfway through dinner, she leaned forward, raised her glass for a toast, her face eerily composed, and said, "I've been cheating on you for 2 years." Her voice was calm, emotionless. For a moment, the world tilted. The glass in my hand felt weightless, as if floating in midair. I waited for any sign that this was some kind of cruel anniversary joke, but her eyes, fixed on me with an unsettling clarity, told me that the words hanging in the air weren't a mistake. Betrayal, fury, humiliation, and everything else crashed over me at once. I chose to do something that even shocked me. Rather than let those feelings rule me, I raised my glass and grinned as though nothing had happened. "To your new life," I said in a firm voice. Her brows furrowed slightly, a hint of confusion crossing her face. She realized this wasn't the response she had anticipated. I took a thoughtful drink of wine and leaned back in my chair. "Does he make you happy?" I asked, keeping my tone calm. Olivia shifted uncomfortably, avoiding my eyes. "It's complicated," she muttered, and I realized she wasn't sure. She had persuaded herself she was giving up a dull, predictable life, but now, faced with my unexpected response, she was beginning to have second thoughts. The waiter brought us the dessert menu, blissfully ignorant of the emotional bomb that had just exploded at our table. Olivia barely noticed him, but I casually looked at the menu and said, "I'll take a look." Then I turned to her and suggested, "You should try the crème brûlée." She stared at me in disbelief. "How can you pretend this isn't a big deal?" she asked. I placed the menu down. "You've already made up your mind," I said. When dessert came, I excused myself and stepped outside, where the cool air helped me decompress. There was no purpose in getting upset over something that wasn't entirely true, after all. On the inside, it felt like my heart was being torn apart, but I wasn't about to let her see me break. I took a deep breath, pulled out my phone, and called Nathan, my lawyer. It had been years since I'd needed one, but tonight I did. He answered quickly, without asking questions. "Send me what you have, and we'll meet in the morning," he said. I hung up, and then called Alan, the private investigator I had hired months ago because I suspected Olivia's late-night disappearances and secretive behavior. I needed proof before confronting her. Alan had delivered a ton of pictures, videos, dates, hotel receipts, and recordings of their conversations. Olivia believed she had everything under control, that she held the upper hand. But she was clueless. As I returned to the table, I was 10 steps ahead of her. She was absorbed in her phone, but I asked, "How are you going to explain this to the kids?" Her head snapped up for the first time that evening, and genuine uncertainty crossed her face. "I'll figure it out," she muttered. I raised an eyebrow. "You don't have to make things more difficult than they are." She was still in control of the conversation, but now the story was mine. As I left the restaurant, I could hear the door swinging behind me, giving me a strange sense of closure. For the first time in months, I didn't need to unravel everything piece by piece. I had the advantage, and I wasn't about to give it up. I took a few steps before pulling out my phone. Over the past few months, calling Alan had become second nature. When he picked up, I said, "It's time." Without hesitation, he replied, "I'll send everything to her and him before the evening is done. It'll be in their inboxes, and I'll make it public as well." There was a pause, then I added, "Stay steady but resolute. The people closest to us need to know what she's been doing." "Are you certain?" he asked. "I've never been more certain of anything," I said with conviction. By the time I got home, my mind was racing, yet I felt strangely calm. I poured myself a glass of whiskey because the wheels had already started turning, and there was no stopping them now. I sat at the kitchen table and waited. It didn't take long for my phone to start buzzing nonstop with emails and messages. I ignored the deluge of calls and texts, instead opening my laptop and logging into the anonymous account. A few weeks earlier, Alan and I had compiled screenshots of messages, pictures, and thorough accounts of Olivia's affair with David. As friends, family, and acquaintances shared their thoughts, the post's views surged, exposing every lie and betrayal. The general conclusion was that Olivia had gone too far, and there was no turning back. Some were startled, some were outraged, and others, naturally, tried to protect her. My phone rang again, this time showing Olivia's name. I felt a mix of vindication and anger as I watched it ring. When I finally answered, her voice was panicked. "What the hell did you do, Marcus? Why would you do this?" I sat back in my chair and spoke in a calm, firm tone. "Why wouldn't I? After 2 years, did you really think destroying our marriage behind my back wouldn't have consequences?" "This is cruel," she snapped. "You're trying to destroy me." "You destroyed yourself," I replied coolly. "I'm just making sure everyone knows the truth." After a long silence, she whispered, "What do you want from me?" I put my drink down. I wanted a partner I could trust, someone who valued the life we built together. But since you made it clear that wasn't you, all I want now is for you to own up to your mistakes. The fallout began in earnest the next morning. Friends called one another to share their disgust and outrage at Olivia. Others severed all contact with her. David wasn't immune either. His job, a prominent law firm, put him on indefinite leave, damaging his hard-earned reputation after years of dedication. Olivia tried to defend herself by calling friends and family to make amends, but the more she tried to deny the truth, the worse she looked. A few days later, I received a call from David, and I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. "Why did you do it?" His voice was defeated. "Why air everything out like this?" I replied simply, "Because you needed to know what it feels like." I could hear his shallow breathing on the other end, but he didn't respond. Finally, he muttered, "I never meant for this to happen." I laughed icily. "Whether you intended it or not, decisions have repercussions." Which is why, at the end of the week, Olivia arrived at the house.